Hello, dear viewers. Welcome back to the channel for episode 4 of Somali and the Forest Spirit. So, last episode where we left off, we got Somali going off to play on her own, although I guess you can't really say she's playing because she's actually praying, hoping that she can continue to travel with Golem, right? And then we've got this dangerous situation where then out of the blue, this wolf hunter kind of dude saves her, but is he actually friend or foe? My guess is more towards friend, but we shall see, right? It's just based on the way that the series is going so far. I feel like it's a little bit too wholesome to actually get into a kidnapping situation, but I could be wrong, right? But anyways, let's just get into the episode and find out. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Alright. Still doing his waiter duties. As expected. He's kind of distracted. Alright, back to the opening song. Now, if that wolf dude does turn out to be, more of a, more on the good side of things, then I guess it's really just trying to be this warm, welcoming anime, I guess. So I don't really need to worry about whether there's gonna be some darkness within the anime. I know, I'm just naturally suspicious of these kinds of things, and especially with all this, look at all that glare. But anyways. So I also made the sort of discussion last episode in regards to just how much Somali knows about their current trip, right? And whether or not she actually had parent figures before, or she only understands the concept of parent figures. I guess that's also an interesting distinction to make, right? Personally, I feel like she never actually met her parents. She's just simply projecting the need of parents to someone like Golem. Because if she has met her parents before, then why would she call Golem her father, right? That would make no sense. The promise. Rawr. Bullseye. Shisho? Okay. And what did I say? Suchin. Look at them. Of course, they have to have some bird-like creatures flexing. No, this really isn't a place for kids, honestly.
ソマリちゃん、花が。どうして。
これは持って帰るのは無理だな。家に着く頃には枯れちまう。
そんな。じゃあソマリのお願いは。師匠、なんでなの。
見てみろ。
これは根っこが光ってる。
土闇の木の根だ。
I guess they need to be in this environment.
樹液を養分にしている。だが小さな木からは少ない養分しか届かない。わかるな。少ない養分で咲いた花の生命力は弱いってことだ。
じゃあ大きな土闇の木の近くならもっと生命力の強い花が手に入るよね。それならきっと。
諦めな。中心部までの道は危険で複雑だ。とても子供の足で行ける場所じゃねえ。ほら。
Oh, they're definitely going to travel there now.
やだ、諦めない。見つかるまで探す。
置いてかれたいのか。
平気だ。一人で帰れる。ソマリは花を見つけてお父さんとの願いを叶えるんだ。
And of course, he's going to help her.
地下世界は上の町の何倍も広くて深い。正直、土の子組でも知らない部分だってまだまだある。安全は保証できない。それでも行くか。
行く。
ついてきな。案内してやる。
Of course.
よかったね。
The gruff old man who's actually really kind to children.
遠足に行くわけじゃねえんだぞ。しばらく前のことだが、旅の学者連中を護衛した時、偶然でかい土闇の木を見つけてな。あそこに咲いていた夜雨の花なら、持ち帰ってもしばらく枯れないだけの生命力があるはずだ。
すごいな。ムスリカは何でも知ってるんだな。そりゃ僕の師匠だもん。なあ、ソマリも師匠って呼んでいいか。
黙ってついてこい。転んで怪我しても知らねえぞ。
了解、師匠。
たく、ガキの子守は疲れるぜ。
Definitely so.
これ飛び越えるの。
この程度のこともできねえんじゃ、花にはたどり着けねえぞ。
ソマリちゃん。ありがとう。
根性あるじゃねえか。先行くぞ。
ちょっと待ってよ。
情けねえやつだな、キラボー。あの程度の小川くらいで。
もう師匠ってば、ちゃんと飛べたじゃないか。
尻尾は濡れたがな。
せっかくのモフモフが台無しだ。もうソマリちゃんまで。
You're one to talk, Somali. You have gotten completely wet.
木はこの下だ。
この下。そうか。枝キノコの胞子玉か。行くよ、ソマリちゃん。キキーラ。せーの。
Boing, boing, boing. Ow. Alright. I'm getting a sort of Ghibli kind of feeling down here.
さっきの花よりずっと立派だ。行こう。
You know, with this entire environment, a sort of, you know, blind determination. Ooh.
おい、お前ら、すぐ戻れ。
なんでいい師匠。
Giant toad.
土と影だ。
Okay, a lizard.
どうする。
Oh, it's a parent itself. Aww. Right, right out of a Ghibli setting.
男前だったぞキキーラ。
ありがとうキキーラ。うんでもどうして。
土トカゲは土闇の木の主、いわば花の番人だ。それがお前を見逃したってことは、つまりお前の願いを聞き入れてくれたってことだろう。
Yeah, you better get a move on or it's gonna dim. Oh. Are they gonna get admonished?
キキーラ、ムスリカさん、
いつもの届け物だ。
すみません。
お父さんこれ夜ザメの花って言うんだ。
暗くなる前に戻れと言ったはず。
Yeah, he's pissed.
なぜ無断で寄り道した。
僕が行こうって言ったんだ。だから
ソマリが寄り道したことには変わりない。なぜ言いつけを破った。それともあえてそうしたのか。
違う。ソマリは。
これ以上勝手な行動をとるのなら、もう旅を続けることはできない。
ソマリちゃん。
Well,
ソマリちゃん。ソマリちゃん。ねえ返事してよ。ソマリちゃん。
ゴーレムさん、もう少しちゃんと話し合った方がいいのでは。何か事情があったのかもしれないですし。いいな。言いつけを守らなかったソマリに明らかに非がある。
ゴーレムっつうのは相変わらず頭の固い生き物なんだな。
どういう意味だ。
あんたが迷信を信じるかどうかは知らねえが、この町にはこんな言い伝えがある。この夜ザメの花を枯らさずに持ち帰ることができれば、必ず願いが叶うってな。
迷信か。理解しかねるな。
だがジョーちゃんは信じた。あんたとずっと一緒にいたい。あの子はな、その願いを叶えるために必死になってこの花を取ってきたんだ。あんな小さな体で、あんな小さな手でな。ゴーレムさんよ、親やってるなら子供を不安にさせんじゃねえ。じゃあな。
あ、ムスリカさん、今日はありがとうございました。
おう。
gruff old man. Of course, he's gonna impart some leaving wisdom.
ソマリちゃん。開けるよ。あ大変だ。ソマリちゃんが。
What?
ソマリ、
Oh, I thought she had ran away.
発熱している。平常時より3度ほど高い。
父ちゃん薬は。
家にあるのは 私ら首里柄種族用の薬だけだからな。
And she's currently passing as a Minotaur, right? But she can't use Minotaur medicine as either.
食べたくない。
却下だ。栄養を取らねば完治せぬぞ。無理をしても口に入れろ。
ソマリちゃん。気持ち悪い。食べたくないって言ったのに。
どうしました？薬を買ってくる。今からですか？お店はもう閉まって。長距離の移動、日々の疲労、加えて精神的な打撃。ソマリの小さな体にかかる負担の大きさに気づく機会は幾度もあった。だが、私は
And he still tells himself he doesn't have emotions?
こんな時間に何の用です？
薬を売ってくれ。
はあ？どの種族向けの薬でしょうか？
Yeah.
すべての種族に効く薬だ。
あることはありますが、成分が貴重なのでかなり高価ですよ。大体でも種族の目星がつくなら。
これで足りるか？薬だ。飲む。ゆっくりで構わない。慌てずともよい。大丈夫だ。ゆっくり。
No child wants to eat medicine.
そうだ。それでよい。
Come next morning, she's like completely energetic.
だいぶ落ち着いてきたようだ。そうですか。それはよかった。ソマリの体調不良の原因は私だ。私は旅を急ぐことばかりに気を取られ、ソマリの変化に気づけなかった。結果、皆に迷惑をかけてしまった。すまない。ソマリちゃんのことが本当に大切なんですね。見ていればわかります。大事に守って間違えないように導いて。でもね、ゴーレムさん、完璧な親などいないんです。私も時々失敗します。感情に任せて怒ってしまったり、時にはひどく泣かせてしまったり。でも自分が失敗したらごめんねって抱きしめてあげる。そして大切だって気持ちをちゃんと伝えてあげる。そうやって成長していく。
All parents should probably watch this.
それが親子。
お父さん。
That's to hold hands.
どうだ、楽になったか？
少しだけ。
そうか。
So
無理はしなくていい。辛いようならこれからはすぐに言え。わかったな。
is she gonna be super energetic when she wakes up? No.
だいぶ熱は下がったか？薬がちゃんと効いたようだ。
でもまずかった。
良薬は口に苦いものだ。この先のことだが、もう少しここで働くことにした。この町を出たら大砂砂漠へ向かう。路銀は多めにある方がいい。
お金まだいっぱいにならないのか？ソマリの薬を買ったからか？ソマリの
私も不安にさせてすまなかった。
お父さんはソマリとずっと一緒にいてくれる？旅が終わってもずっとずっといてくれる？
ああ、
うん。
ずっと共にいよう。
I wonder if there's something like golems keep their promises or something like that.
よかった。約束だ。約束だぞ、お父さん。
ああ、約束する。
Hmm. You know, if how can this not end in a happy ending?
この町でゴーレムに会うとはな。俺はここに来る前、兵隊やっててな。あちこちの土地を渡って、
Oh,
珍しい植
I was gonna say, I know she's a human.
西の果ての森では寿命の
Oh no, actually, he knows that he's at his life.
あんたのような。あんたとずっと一緒にいたいってジョーちゃんの願い。裏切ることにならなきゃいいな。
Then how would you know? I guess he was staying at the inn. Obviously, I don't mean that she made the wish, but that he made the promise.
それは。
Alrighty, see you guys after this. Okay, so I think I misspoke a little bit at the very end there when I was talking about how Musrika knew about the promise that Somali made with Golem, right? So he wasn't actually talking about the promise, he was still talking about the wish that Somali made, but I mean the end result is still the same, right? He's still saying to Golem, hey, don't break the girl's heart or something like that. And of course, this wolf hunter dude did turn out to be this gruffy old man who's very protective and loving of children at the very end here. So I guess all things worked out in the end. So I will admit this episode was a bit of a tearjerker. Probably a lot of people who are more, I guess, sensitive to these kinds of things might have been bawling at the end there. And I mean, it is definitely a pretty strong emotional moment there, right? Particularly for this sort of parent-child bonding, and how the depiction of how children are the first priority of parents anywhere, right? It is definitely something great to see. And with that promise at the very end there as well. So I was thinking how, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, how I think that something of that would probably happen, right? Golem would eventually learn about Somali's wish, and then, in order to get her to cheer up again, make a promise with her. Now, golems obviously aren't exactly robots. I guess they aren't exactly bound by anything to say that they are going to keep their promises no matter what. They can't lie or something like that. But, being this sort of happy series that this has been so far, I see no reason why, just for some fun speculation, right? How exactly could they set this up so that Somali could continue to live with Golem even past his life expectancy, right? Now, obviously, the most happy ending would be for the Golem to be able to live past his life expectancy. So there would have to be some major setup there, and it's gonna have to twist a lot of different things, right? Because obviously, it's introducing something that's not quite within the confines of the rules of this world, and yeah, that's basically it. They're going to have to bend a lot of the rules in order to do that. Maybe a slight more compromise would be something I mentioned before, how potentially, since golems are, by definition, intelligent beings created by some other sorcerer or by some sort of wielder of magic, Golem could be reborn, right? That I could also see that being an ending. For this golem to eventually end its life, but for its soul or heart or whatever you want to call it, its essence, being transferred into a new body and continuing to live on, right? That could be a slight compromise there. Now, of course, the very bittersweet kind of ending would be one where Golem at the end of this journey, at the end of his life, does eventually, cease to live. Although maybe at that point, some important piece of him, some important memento would stay with Somali, and so that is how they carry on this promise of being together forever, right? Now, obviously, this is probably the most saddest out of these possibilities, and guaranteed everybody would probably be bawling their eyes out at the very last episode. I mean, probably me as well, even though I don't tend to get too emotional over these things. But I mean, that's like far off in the future, right? We're probably never. It's probably never going to be anime adapted unless they really do a full adaptation. I don't think this series is actually that short. So yeah, that's like way into the future. It's just some fun speculation, I guess. Speaking of which, speaking of all of the promises and how, parent-children relationship, we did get some pretty sage advice on parenting here as well, right? I do think that, everything they are speaking about is true. Now, obviously, I'm not a parent myself, but it makes a lot of sense, right? And so here's the funny thing, though. I might sound like an asshole for getting to this point, but, this scene actually, and the topic that it touched upon, actually reminded me a lot of the sort of like children books that I read when I was very young. I mean, something like between the age of 7 or 12, I guess, 7, 11. But basically it has to do with this entire situation of parent your parent figure getting angry at you, breaking the rules and whatnot, and so on and so forth, right? Now, obviously, because we're following it from Somali's perspective, and most of these children's books are also following from the children's perspective as well. We know that it's not particularly a case where she it wasn't out of any malicious intent or whatnot, right? She had a very good reason for wanting to do this kind of thing and directly disobeying her dad's orders, right? Now, however, there is still this concept of trust, right? Trust of a child by their parent, and especially in a lot of these cases, what is a lot of times emphasized is how you have to understand this is the first time that Golem actually trusted Somali to be on her own and explore for a little while, right? And so she broke this trust right at the first time here. This is actually something, this is a concept that is constantly reiterated and reinforced in a lot of children's books, and probably in quite a lot of those sort of parenting manuals or guidelines as well, right? And so, like I said at the beginning, even though I might sound like an asshole for saying this, particularly with all that's happened, some punishment seems to be deserved here, right? Now, again, I'm not advocating that you get really strict on it or whatnot, but of course, you need to weigh in on the circumstances and whatnot. But you still have to, generally speaking, you still have to let the child understand that, okay, I get your reasons and whatnot, but still, this was a deliberate decision to disobey, direct wishes and orders of the parents, right? So still some punishment must be had. Now, of course, some could also argue that she got into a cult, so that was punishment enough, yada yada yada, and she's a poor little child. I mean, sure, fine, right? And I get it, this is not exactly a children's book, and honestly, I'm not a parent myself, so I can't really, I'm not in the best position to say what's good for children or whatnot, right? But, speaking as a son of my parents, I think it's only fair for in this situation, if I was in that situation, to get some punishment as well, because at the end of the day, you did break the rules, right? And discipline is still required. At least that's how I was brought up, anyways. And to this day, I still think it's a pretty fair rule. Like, obviously, you need to take into consideration everything else that's going on and everything that's happened, but still. So, I don't know, how do you guys think about this, right? Now, obviously, I feel like the demographic of people watching this probably wouldn't really be there probably wouldn't be that many parents in here, although I know a few guys here on my channel are parents with their own children, right? And then again, I think most of my viewers, going from the demographics and whatnot, I like to think a bit more on the older side and more mature side of things. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this? I think, even though, of course, I'm glad that they made up in the end, right? Glad that they were able to hear each other out. But still, I think it's very important to reinforce this concept of, okay, I totally, from the parents' perspective, I understand you. I'm speaking to you as my child, still in understanding terms. I'm respecting, what you went through and what made you do this decision, but still at the very end having a firm hand and saying, hey, still, this is not right. You cannot do this again, and the punishment that goes along with it, right? Because otherwise, obviously that's probably not going to happen to Somali, but in real life, you might get, if you always allow them to have these kinds of excuses and whatnot, you might end up with a spoiled child, right? So there we go. I just thought that was an interesting discussion point because it really reminded me a lot of all the children's books and all the morals and values that I gleaned and learned from those early years of my childhood. So I thought it would be a fun topic to bring out. Anyways, that's episode 4 of Somali and the Forest Spirit. See you guys in the next one. Bye bye.